2, 1. Hello, Forrest Eckley. It's a pleasure to have
Lauren.
you on the show. I'm super excited to have you on the show because I really believe that your business is such an important part of the economy. And to me, small community-based businesses are the countervailing power to big corporation and Wall Street. And I think right now, while we're kind of all on pause at the moment, it's really important to talk about how small business really feeds the community and is, for the people. And your business, Glasswing, which is a beautiful store in Seattle, you also have the greenhouse, which is just around the corner, and you have Canyon Creek Cabins, which is your beautiful cabin out in the mountains that you run as a Airbnb. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And you also do creative sculptural, more like furniture-based projects as well. So you do so many things that's all based out of the Seattle community. And I just want to, talk about all of these wonderful things that you do.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I have a feeling that this episode's going to be a very storytelling kind of episode. But yeah, for folks who don't know, can you tell us about Glasswing?
Sure. Yeah, so like you said, it's really just a platform for creativity in our area in the Pacific Northwest. And it kind of came about because we noticed that corporations were really the model for success in our area. We come from kind of a remote place. We're tucked away in the far northwest part of the country, but coincidentally, a lot of big ideas have come out of this area. So like Microsoft and Amazon and Boeing and Costco and T-Mobile and a bunch of tech.
Yeah, doesn't Google have their headquarters in Seattle?
They have offices.
Oh, they have offices there.
I think they're based in California.
I see.
But yeah, a lot of corporations are headquartered here, and I'm not from here, so I moved here maybe 10 years ago, but I had this idea of Seattle being an art city. And after I lived here for a couple of years, my friends and I were all just kind of complaining about our jobs. And, we got to the point where we got tired of hearing each other complain. And so we started putting our ideas down and started testing them out. And they were all kind of centered around bringing art back to the street level and making it accessible. Because the way art was experienced at the time, and it's still very much like this, that you buy a ticket and you go see art that's on a wall that you can't touch, or it's up on a pedestal on a stage, and then you go home or you go back out in the streets and you don't see art again unless you pay a ticket to a venue and see something for a very short period of time. And that just felt so counter to what art is as expression and self-expression. So what we're doing is just supposed to be one of many avenues and attempts to make art a part of everyday life.
Yeah. Well, when you go into your store in Seattle, you can really tell that it was the brainchild of art-minded people, because it's such a sensory experience to go into the store, and like you walk in, you're immediately presented with such lush greenery, and then you're kind of led through almost like a museum of the beautiful craft and brain juices of some super talented designers and just makers. So tell me about also your greenhouse project. That's a relatively new space.
Yeah. So we started out by testing our ideas, and it was a group of friends that were doing it. It wasn't just me. It was a group of people, and we all had different skills and passions and things that we wanted to experiment with. So we would do a pop-up shop about every 3 months, and we would test product development ideas. We would test marketing ideas, locations, try and learn how to work with designers from different parts of the world, and the ideas that the community kind of continued to say, yes, we want more of that, was around independent clothing, custom furniture, and plants. And the plants were, for us, just an accident. We were going into these spaces that were in transition, that didn't have leases, and we were going in for like 5 days for free, or 2 days for like $1,000. We would just take whatever we could get. And we would get into them, and they would feel very hard and cold and sterile. So Elisa, one of my friends and partners, went to Home Depot and filled up a van full of plants and kept the receipts, and we were just going to return them after the weekend. And so many people wanted to buy the plants that we just kind of felt bad. And so we ended up selling the plants.
That's such a great story.
And then we had to go back to Home Depot and get more plants so that the space still felt good, but they kept selling. So It was just a kind of a response to what people were asking for,
Yeah, it sounds like the way that you you test things out, and your business kind of mushrooms in this really organic way based on, the feedback that the community give you. I know that you spend like every day on the store floor interacting with your customers, and you really get a sense of what people want and how people you are so familiar with all of your customers. It's really inspiring. Tell me how you've built your family, the Glasswing family, how that kind of grew, and the people involved with the business.
Well, we work with so many creative, fun people, and I think the shop kind of fosters that creativity, but without the people, it wouldn't really exist, because like on the plant side, we got to a point where people were coming in, and because we were selling plants, they expected us to be plant experts. And because we were experts on everything else in the shop, there was no, we couldn't like give a disclaimer that like, yeah, these plants are for sale, but we don't really know that much about them. So we had to simultaneously learn and hire someone who was on that level.
Yeah.
And so one of our teammates, Tassie, she is from our area, lived in New York, opened up a plant store there, and then had kids and wanted to come back, and the timing just worked out great. And so we're super thankful to have her on the team.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's quite I think like having a wide, diverse range of different expertise is really important, because your business is so diverse in the way that it services the community. Actually, it was this time last year that I was in Seattle and I came to visit you, which I also really want to talk about, because you took me on the most incredible Pacific Northwest adventure, which was like, I felt like it was such a treat. So for folks who don't know, Glasswing represent women's wear in the Seattle area. And so I came to visit last year while I was kind of doing a world tour of visiting the different retailers for women's wear. And that was my first time in the Pacific Northwest. And it really blew my mind how freaking beautiful the context of Seattle is, the surrounding mountains and forests and the ocean. So Forrest took me out to the Canyon Creek Cabin, which is this geometric wooden cabin structure. It feels quite modern, like a very modern structure in this very like lush kind of landscape of forest and cascading mountain water. There's a super beautiful, are they called the Cascades? Where just below the cabin, there's meltwater that kind of flows, and it's got this beautiful light blue color and constant white noise of sound, and it's such an incredible context. And you've built that cabin into a really meditative space where people can go and stay there. So we hung out there for a couple of nights, I think it was, and you took me onto a couple of trails around the Cascades. We went to the ice caves. You took me to the ice caves, which was so fun. It's, for me, seeing such huge mountains is such a like overwhelming experience in itself. Because I grew up in Thailand and Australia, where we do have mountains in Australia, but nowhere as tall as in the Pacific Northwest. And then we went to Whidbey Island, and we stayed at we stayed at the Captain Whidbey Inn, and that was so cool. I felt like I was on the set of like a Wes Anderson film. It's like this boutique, for folks who don't know, it's this boutique hotel. Maybe you might be better at explaining what the Whidbey Inn is like.
Yeah, it's a 100-year-old Madrona log cabin that it's kind of, when you're upstairs, it feels like you're on a ship that's moving because nothing's really straight, and the light kind of comes in at odd angles, and the floor is tilted, and it's a special spot. There aren't that many old buildings on the West Coast, so it always feels special to be in an old space like that. They must have done a renovation, but they really preserved the original like vibe of the space, and that's so important with old buildings. And I want to tell people that when we were staying at the Whidbey Inn, one night we made a fire. We had a fire on the beach, and then the most mind-boggling experience happened. I think it was Elisa. She threw something in the water, and all of a sudden, these flashing neo blue lights just started flickering in the water, and we just all suddenly turned into like 5-year-old kids splashing around the water. That was the bioluminescent plankton. And it was such a head spin because at the time I was researching for the Spring 20 collection that's all based around like marine research and deep sea exploration and these strange like bioluminescent creatures. So to actually see something like that in real life was just, such a special experience. Like, have to thank you so much for that really awesome trip. And finally
we also went to, what was it called? Fort. It was like a World War II bunker.
Did we go to Fort Casey?
Oh yeah, we went to Fort Casey. That was really cool as well to see these like geometric cement bunkers just built into the landscape. Yeah, we hung out there for a while, but yeah, it really shows me that whole landscape of the Pacific Northwest is so inspiring, which brings me to inspiration. How do you find your inspiration? How do you inspire your creative projects?
You know, I think I would probably first go back to the friends and team that I work with. Like Elisa, who I started the shop with, is such a fast learner, and she just can absorb things really quickly and do her own version or action an idea really quickly. And Andy, who's the furniture designer friend of ours that does most of the furniture designs. He's really fun to collaborate with. His mind works very quickly, and he just wants to start like grabbing materials and seeing how they'll flex and fit together. And so he's a very physical learner, and just that mix of different learning styles and interests always takes the beginning of an idea and to a place that I could not have foreseen it going. So I think that that for me is the most exciting part, like coming up, finding a little bit of inspiration and then sharing it with people and kind of seeing where it goes. And there's always some level of discomfort there of like, you have an idea for where this could go, and then 4 other people start like pushing your idea around, and
you're like, no, mine.
Well, I've learned that I think that instinct is always in me to really focus on the original thought or dream, but through collaborating with these friends for the last 5 or 6 years, I've kind of learned that it's only going to be made better by people questioning why something can't be another way, or why it should be this way, or what if we take it in this direction. I think that's kind of it's uncomfortable, but it's also what has, when that happens, there's an opportunity for something new to be created.
Yeah, I think collaborating on creative projects is like a really special skill of listening and communicating openly, and kind of, you almost have to be a very highly evolved self to be able to stop those childish voices in your head of of ownership, and be open to the possibility of an idea evolving into something so much greater than what you could have imagined on your own.
Right.
Yeah, I think teamwork is really not easy, but when you can do it, it's the equation of possibility just expands. Sorry, people, if my my concept of maths is a bit skewed, but yeah.
So within your circle, where do you find the most fruitful feedback loops, and like who do you bounce your ideas off of?
So my business is a lot smaller. There's 3 of us. There's Gigi, who is on the design side, and there's Boo, who is on communication side, and both of them are very different, and they work in very different ways, which is a good exercise for me to get into a different headspace when I'm working with the 2 of them. And sometimes we work on projects, all three of us together, which is the most fun because I think when the three of us get together to do something, there's this like new energy of excitement, and that's when things get really fun. And also when like when Boo and Gigi are able to do a project together on their own without me, for me that's really exciting as well. And they always surprise me. They ran our annual warehouse sale without me in early Feb, and I was so impressed with the way they interpreted the concept of the warehouse sale, how they designed the space, and how they interacted with all the customers. But for me, inspiration comes from all aspects of life. Like it comes from my interaction with different people that I meet on my travels and working, visiting all the makers who make our products, and visiting the retailers like yourself and catching up on what's been inspiring them at the moment. Also, the state of the world informs a lot of my work as well. I'm always questioning what it means to exist on this planet, and how culture is constantly evolving. And right now, I feel this real radical energy in me because of what's happening in the world, and how this coronavirus has forced us to all literally stop, slow down, and reevaluate how systems that were just snowballing and growing in power, how those systems don't function properly, and especially in the fashion industry, how this seasonal cycle of fashion, how that could be reworked and drawn back to be more efficient, more impactful, and less wasteful. The model of fast fashion, I think now is the perfect time to voice how damaging fast fashion is, and how important it is to consume responsibly and invest your money in businesses that, really value the art and craft of making objects and making clothes. So I'm always inspired by the world around me, and that always pushes me to look into different points of time in history, and to see if there's a pattern that has evolved, and a pattern that reoccurs through history. Like right now we're going through, just post-coronavirus, we were already in a new Cold War between the US and China, and that really resonated me with the Cold War post, in the like post-Vietnam War era, where it just feels like we forget about points of time in history, and we don't seem to learn our lessons. And I think revisiting history, especially for our younger generation, is so important to get us to question, to get us to voice our opinions on how the world is being run today. And this kind of activism is so necessary in order for us to evolve and improve, rather than to just repeat this cyclical cycle of power shifts in this power struggle. Inspiration comes from so many places. Also, the music we listen to, what I find when I'm looking at vintage. I'm always going to flea markets around summertime. Where I live in France. The flea market season starts from spring and goes all the way through till autumn starts. And every single Sunday, my husband and I are digging for stuff. I don't know, going to a flea market is the most exciting thing. We look forward to it every week. The last little present I sent you was the JOB Orchestra record that it's this groovy Hare Krishna. I think it was made in the late 70s. It's a record that has this really mixed, funky mix with Hare Krishna kind of vibe to it. But if you listen to the lyrics, it's all about love of the earth, love of each other, and it's got such an incredible production value behind it, probably because the Hare Krishna at that time had a lot of money to invest in really high quality produced music. But the world is a really... I don't understand this concept of boredom, because there's just so much all over the place that keeps me scratching my head. What about you?
Well, I'm curious. Something that you said earlier grabbed my attention, and that was around how we are not very good at learning from previous mistakes, and it really seems like in my area of the world, the government and the messaging is to bring things back to what they were as soon as possible. And that it kind of, we hear that and at the same time feel like if things go back to the way they were, this is going to happen again.
Absolutely.
And we're not going to be prepared for it.
Yeah.
So there's this there's a conflict there. There's an internal conflict there that I think a lot of people are feeling but not expressing yet. And there's also a really big difference in accessibility, and there's a lot of problems that could be addressed right now.
Yeah, let's talk about those problems, because there are a lot of parallels that can be drawn with what's happening in the US right now with the UK, post-Brexit UK. And even on the podcast last episode, I talked to Yumi Sakuma, who's a writer who is she's a Japanese writer but lives in New York, and she was drawing a lot of parallels between how Trump and Shinzo Abe have been dealing with the coronavirus in complete just blind hope that things will just magically fix itself if they just keep muscling on and push the economy forward. I want to talk about this uncertain feeling that so many Americans are feeling about the need to go back to work, the need to start up business again, but the uncertainty about health and safety, personal security while working, and the fact that honestly the government has made it so difficult for people to receive their unemployment benefits that they are, in some cases, forced to go back to work in unsafe conditions, which is definitely something that comes from right up the top of the pyramid of power. And I think the voices like Dr. Fauci saying that it's not safe yet to go back to work because America has not reached the other end of their curve. And also people like Robert Reich, who has been quite I've been paying a lot of attention to his ex-Minister of Labour during Clinton. He's got this brilliant book called Saving Capitalism, and it was made into a Netflix documentary. But he's been so active on YouTube and Facebook at the moment, just really telling people how it is, and telling people that they have a right to stand up for their own safety. They have a right to be looked after by the government, and they should not stand for being bullied into feeling unsafe and having to go back to work. But yeah, right now we are so polarized that the protests, these anti-COVID protests of conspiracy theorists, just blow my mind. That's been happening all over. It's been happening in Australia as well, of people believing that this COVID pandemic has been a conspiracy to get 5G pass through. Guys,
Wait, like Wi-Fi speed?
5G, like phone, yeah. Yeah.
How is that related?
Well, apparently, if there's a theory, the conspiracy theorists will find a way.
This whole thing is about Wi-Fi?
Yeah, this whole thing's about Wi-Fi. Yeah. Sorry to break that to you. But I mean, honestly, it's just, I feel compassion towards the conspiracy theorists, because really what's going on is this lack of faith, this lack of belief in authority, because authority has let them down. You know, in Australia, the Prime Minister let the Australians down during the worst bushfires that they've ever seen. Trump continues to let people down in, eliminating so many securities that people need to feel safe and to feel like they can progress and evolve and contribute to society. If you don't feel safe, you cannot contribute anything. You feel paralyzed by fear. So, yeah, it's a wild world. I mean, this is happening a lot in the UK as well. And the UK is the only country in Europe that is really struggling to get beyond their peak as well. So, yeah, I really feel like right now is a time to speak up about these real issues that if we don't talk about them, if regular people don't talk about them, and we leave this conversation to a select group of people in society, then we are just as to blame for this political mess. So yeah, that's where I get this this fire in myself of activism, to speak about things that really need speaking about. Yeah, I don't even know what we were talking about before.
Well, you brought up so many interesting points in there.
Yeah.
I thought one thing that you said was a really good observation, in that conspiracy theories come up because people have been let down, and there's such a high level of distrust with the people who are controlling and delivering the message. And I mean, full disclosure, my mom sent me a conspiracy video about the coronavirus.
Tell me.
It was actually a really well done documentary. It was about a 30-minute documentary from interviewing a doctor, and there were a bunch of semi-believable things, and I think especially if you're in an area where you don't know anyone who's been sick, you don't know anyone who has died, and yet your whole community has been required to shut down, and no one's been sick in anyone's immediate community. And I can understand in that situation why you would be looking for answers for why this is why alternative reasons for why this is happening, especially when the voice box of this is a fake business person who is a reality TV star who basically made their money by just selling their name and not actually being a good leader, not actually being a good manager. And if their whole job is just like selling something that doesn't actually have value, I understand. It makes total sense that you would not believe in what they're saying and look for an alternative motive.
I think that's a really good question, is how do we find information that is true these days? How do we find honest information? Because we are completely saturated by information from so many different places. Now, being under the same roof as my parents, I've realized that finding reliable information on the internet is actually a very, very specific skill set, and not everyone is equipped with that. From people in my parents' generation who did not grow up with the internet, who were raised in an education system that taught people to not question authority, then there are so many times when my parents show me things that they find on the internet, like your mom's video, and I've had to try and teach my parents how to scour through reliable sources, how to question things and not take things on face value, because the internet is full of just junk. And even the news, the way that the news media operates, we all have to question the authenticity of different news media outlets as well. Who funds them? What is their agenda behind reporting specific angles on news pieces? And all of this realization, especially watching my parents, the realization that all this information has to constantly be questioned is anxiety inducing. It's panicking, because then it's like the floor under your feet is starting to like wobble and wave, because this what you thought was the certainty of being able to believe basic things like the news is not a truth anymore. And
I think it's made a lot of people just disengage.
Absolutely.
I wonder, what has it been like living with your parents during this crazy time, and you can't leave? You can't like be like, hey, it's been a nice weekend. I love you. I'll see you in 3 months.
It's been...
What has that been like?
It's been a wild ride. It's been like real challenging. Like, I feel like we're all onions and we have so many layers that need peeling back. And this has been a real life pinnacle of, being forced to live under the same roof with my parents and kind of peel back these sensitive layers of the onion, which has been, to be honest, I will remember this for the rest of my life. And I talked to my husband about this. He's the same, living with his mother at home right now. We both agreed that we will both remember this and cherish this, despite how difficult it has been, for the rest of our life, because this is one of the rare moments that we have the opportunity to really get to know our parents as the people they are, rather than this image of father and mother that we are raised to see them as and put them on a pedestal as they're just human beings themselves with their own flaws and baggage and different interpretations of how reality is. And yeah, I've been in, especially with my dad, if he listens to this, he'll probably smile. But yeah, I've been in some real close clashes with my dad because you know, we are in some ways way too similar for our own good. I see
And
some. My
your
dad's
dad's from
British.
Australia?
Yeah, he's British Australian, and he's an entrepreneur. He's had his own business for, I don't know, 40 years or so. And he's 71 now. He still works.
And you told me he advises airlines?
He has a consulting firm that consults for airlines and hotels. And it's a very abstract concept. He designs the guest experience, which sounds like what? When I say that to people, they're kind of just like, what? Does he make a product? What is that? But yeah, his work process is very conceptual. It's both tangible and intangible. So he has they design things that you interact with on an airline, for example, like from the uniforms to the cutlery and everything you see, feel, and touch, but also like the intangible things like the dialogue between what the customer and the for example, the air host or hostess has with the customer. There are so many intangible things that are involved with his business. But anyway, that was a tangent. Dealing. My dad and I have been clashing, but at the same time, without these clashes, we wouldn't get to know each other on another level, which has been probably more painful for the people around us than the two of us together, because there's like a daily run-in. But in my opinion, I wouldn't trade that for anything. I'm sorry, Dad, if you felt like I'm just, holding you accountable for everything. But I really want to get to know my dad because I didn't really get to spend much time with him as a younger person. So, we don't know how long we have on this planet. So I just want to get to know my folks and my family on a more human level, and sometimes that means clashes. But honestly, it's been real fun too. Hanging out with my mum, we're good pals anyway. We do have our occasional clashes, but yeah, it's been something I'll remember for a long time. How do you think you would be with your family if you're in my situation?
I think, my parents are they're both artists and they're so project oriented that no matter what type of disagreement we get into, we could all just go disappear into whatever project is inspiring us. And sometimes I think those would probably overlap, and we would be able to just get into making paper or whatever the
so fun.
My mom's a fiber artist, and my dad is a jeweler and a writer, and wow. he can just pick up any instrument and play it, which is a skill I wish I would have inherited.
Incredible.
But yeah, and I grew up in Texas, mm-hmm. which is a kind of a weird place that everyone has a lot of space there, so that the art studio is bigger than the house where they live, and there's a lot of beautiful trees and water. It's kind of a beautiful swamp where I grew up,
Wow.
So I think we'd be fine. We'd figure out ways to play sport or go on walks and do our art together, and at the same time have our clashes too.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this, so I listened to this mindfulness podcast by this lady called Tara Brach. She's huge in this kind of realm. But yeah, she always brings up this story about like these prickly porcupines, and there was like a really cold winter, and the only way to survive, the porcupines had to huddle together to conserve body heat, but the longer they'd huddle together, the more they'd prick each other and jab each other, and it would, so some of them would separate from the pack and go off on their own, and they'd freeze to death. So the realization was it was better to huddle together and prick each other every now and again than to wander off, which is like so much wisdom.
Yeah, what a good metaphor.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been a new Netflix series called Midnight Gospel, which is full of these super deep insights into existence, self-exploration, self-knowledge. It's by a bunch of comedians. I think some of the original creators were those who created Adventureland. Is that? Yeah, Adventureland, but I didn't get into Adventureland, but this Midnight Gospel's real nice to listen to if you like stories like that. Just FYI.
All right.
Yeah, let's go on to our kind of Ponytail culture club of what kind of bits of culture have been grabbing your attention right now.
Sure. Well, I'm in a movie club with my girlfriend and housemate and a handful of other close friends that don't get to hang out anymore or for a little while. So we've been connecting once a week, and we do like pizza and beer and
Nice.
discuss the movie we watched each week. And each week someone else chooses the movie. And our friend Chelsea chose Stalker last week, this Russian directed film from the late 70s that just blew me away. I saw it and just couldn't believe that I hadn't heard of it or seen it before, and it's been on my mind all week.
Yeah.
Have you seen that one?
I haven't yet. I saw the trailer, and I'm not able to get the movie by streaming in my region, but I will find a way, because it looks like a real post-Cold War kind of, is it a Cold War era film? And it's like, seems real abstract. Yeah, the concept.
You might be able to buy it, or you might be able to rent it on YouTube.
Okay.
And check there.
All right.
But yeah, that one's been on my mind all week. And then, I mean, the news is like a combination of comedy and like horror and everything.
Absolutely. What kind of news do you listen to or watch or read?
That's a good question. My Michaela listens to Democracy Now! Once a week, and we live in a studio apartment. So how we
you listen to it too.
And how we, yeah, exactly. Like we kind of, it's just one room. So yeah, we've been trying to find news that is not all negative and not too gossipy and has some substance. And it's a challenge, I think, because kind of in the same way that the fashion industry is not just focused on the next thing, but like two or three things ahead. There's always like multiple irons in the fire, and there's not enough time to actually sit with and appreciate what is right in front of us. So we're we're actually constantly looking for a news source that actually fulfills that.
Right.
I've been listening to
Oh, yeah.
Pod Save America.
Oh, okay. I don't know that
Occasionally,
one.
have you listened to that?
No, I'm going to write it down.
Some of the team that was on the Obama administration.
Okay.
And just really smart guys that are kind of, I think they do a good job of like laughing and being able to laugh at themselves and being able to like call each other out for, it's just like a group of friends, but also people who are really intelligent, have a lot of experience actually writing speeches. Some of them are the speech writers for Obama, which I just always thought that when he spoke, he really understood the weight of his words. And there was rarely an occasion where I felt like he was just kind of going off script and saying what he felt for whatever reason. It was he always seemed to really understand how important, or like how many people were listening and how much impact his words could have. So it's interesting to hear the people who are writing and picking apart that dialogue, how they're viewing current events and things that are going well or not going well, and why.
I get my news mainly from the British BBC World Service, which is the radio, BBC Radio, and you can stream that from the internet. I really like their I don't know. I only discovered that you can stream the radio from the internet like a year ago, so sorry, bit behind. But yeah, I like how I like their reportage. I think they cover stories of people who have very small voices, unheard voices. They focus on a very human side of the impact of global situations. And yeah, I would recommend the BBC World Service. They have really, I think that they vet their information pretty well. And when they are criticized for any kind of biased angle, they're very quick to correct themselves and acknowledge that. But yeah, and then like on this extreme other side of the scale, I like listening to the Joe Rogan show, the Joe Rogan podcast, because he's probably the biggest podcast in the world. But
isn't that amazing?
It's crazy.
From Fear Factor to like the most influential storyteller in the world.
Yeah, I think he was smart and he used some money that he saved up from Fear Factor to start up the podcast or something like that. I can't remember, but I think the fact that he is a mixed martial artist and a MMA commentator has a lot to do with like his like the way that he is able to view different two sides of any story. And I think like it's another example of someone who is a jack of all trades, who is great at doing everything that he does. And like I think I would like his brain because he is so open to possibility, which is probably what makes him a great comedian and a great podcast interviewer. I really enjoy listening to him. It was interesting. He just interviewed Elon Musk again on his podcast in the last week or so, and Elon Musk is obviously being under fire right now on the news for trying to open up the Tesla factory in these kind of unsafe working conditions at the moment with the virus. And I think it's really interesting to watch a man like his reaction to media criticism and this whole virus. I think he's a great inventor and engineer, but I'm not sure if he's a great, CEO. I don't even know if he's a CEO, but not a great figurehead.
Not a great
leader.
leader.
Figurehead for his companies, and which is like typical of a brilliant person, a brilliant mind, and like, yeah. What are your? Have you been following much about him lately?
Yeah, I think he seems a bit out of touch with with his employees' comfort level, with what the state of California is trying to do. I mean, like with I don't have as big of a organization as him, but I mean, I'm not going to open up our shop again until our team feels comfortable being there.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to open up our shop until I can pay more than the state can pay unemployment. So like those are really big components to this.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear him mention his employees' feelings about safety. I didn't hear him talk at all about like the social distancing recommendations of scientists who are continually trying to prove themselves wrong just by the nature of their job.
Yeah.
And he's like visionary, super smart, doing something really great for the world. Like just what he's done with battery technology and taking cars off the road, I think is forever commendable.
It's been really,
but
Sorry.
That doesn't mean he should be a politician or that he should be he can't do everything.
Yeah, exactly.
He shouldn't be expected to.
Yeah. I think there's some structural issues there. And it's been interesting in this whole environment, this whole scenario, like you see people are really placing these people accountable, like Jeff Bezos for Amazon and the working conditions for the Amazon essential workers, where there have been so many news pieces interviewing people who work in the Amazon fulfillment centers who have said that like maybe up to 90% of the orders are really non-essential items, and they're risking their lives to service a business a corporation that is really profiting big time off the misfortune of this kind of situation and the unsafe work conditions for their staff. One thing that was really cool was in France, the French government actually shut down Amazon France because they realized that this really wasn't an essential service. So to me, I was like, good on you, French government. Yeah, I think people need to talk about these issues, and I think that we'll see a very different world at the end of this tunnel for sure. And we need to start talking about what kind of world we wanna see.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. I think it's been such a powerful reset that none of us thought we would ever have the opportunity to have. And it's really made me, I've appreciated it. I've enjoyed getting to spend more time with Michaela and just been able to refocus and develop new routines that I think are more are healthy and are beneficial, that I'll continue after I'll continue to develop beyond this point that maybe I would not have recognized the value of for a long time. And,
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward. We'll all keep our eyes out on what comes next for the glasswing mushroom community mushroom.
Yeah, if you come to Seattle, say hello.
Absolutely.
We're probably just going to stay right here and try and be a really good neighborhood shop.
Amazing. That's what we need. And we need the good vibes like that in our world. Well, thank you so much, Forrest. This is real fun.
Yeah, it was good to catch up.
Yeah. For folks out there who want to check out Glasswing, how do they do that?
We're, of course, in Seattle, and then we're online, got website, Instagram, all that stuff. We've been experimenting with videos during this time, and hopefully we'll develop that into something that kind of shares and adds story and to the creative community that we interact with every day. That we do so much work to get things presentable online or in the shop, and then they go away or they evolve. But I think those stories, if we create videos, they could be passed along and shared for a longer period of time. So
Absolutely.
we're going to experiment with that more moving forward.
That's why I like YouTube as a platform rather than most of the social media platforms, because it feels like content on YouTube stay relevant forever, whereas things that are time-based, like on Instagram and Facebook, you kind of you brush past them and then you forget about them. Whereas YouTube is interesting. It's like this library it's like a search engine of content where you can find whatever you want. But I'm excited to see your videos.
Thank you.
Well,
it was so good to catch up.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. See you next episode. Thanks for watching, and see you soon, Forrest. Be well.
Bye, Lauren.
Bye.
Thank you.